Hello friends, and welcome back to the Mothership. Today we're going back to basics and we are smoking up our very own baby back ribs on the Weber kettle using the snake method. Let's get started. Here are some baby back ribs. Now to prep these, it's pretty similar to the same way I do spare ribs, with the exception that we don't have to cut any cartilage or sternum bones. So, get it out of its cryovac and take a peek with what we're working with here. This is a pretty meaty cut. Nothing too bad. I could pull a little bit of this fat off, but I don't think I'm going to need to. Flipping it over, there's a little bit of a skirt right here that's going to come right off. Now, I just made a boo-boo because I actually want to get all this membrane off, and that's going to make kind of a pain in the butt. But same way I do with spare ribs. To get the membrane off, you just put a butter knife kind of underneath the membrane, like so. Get a fingy under there and pull it right off. Now this is completely optional, obviously. Some people don't mind the membrane. I don't like it. It adds kind of a texture that we don't really care for in my house, but you could absolutely just leave it on and cook as is. Some people score them, similar to how I do with beef backs, but the reason I usually keep it on with beef ribs is just because it kind of holds the rib together. Pork doesn't really need that. They'll hold together just fine. Boom. All right. So that was very simple. Now all I'm going to do is get some salt on here. Standard rules apply, guys. These are about 3 pounds with bone in them. Probably about half of this is bone, so we can call it maybe 1.5 pounds. And then my usual ratio is about 1/2 teaspoon per pound. Get everything coated down with salt, paying particular attention to the meat side. And now these ribs are going to sit on a wire rack and go back into the fridge for a bit. I just want all this salt to absorb, and then we can come back and put our actual rub on. Perfect. You can see that all of the salt has been absorbed into the meat, so we can get a rub on here. Now at this point you can use whatever you want. Just if you followed along with my salt, make sure you're not adding in extra salt with your rub. What I'm going to do is just to do a light layer of pickle juice, just to get a little bit kind of a binder going, make sure everything adheres. And then we are going pretty tried and true simple. I'm just going to add some coarse black pepper, and some garlic powder. And that looks perfect. I'm going pretty simple because I really just want to taste the charcoal and the wood chunks we're throwing on there. It's been a while since I've had just homemade charcoal ribs, so these are going to be great. Now I'm going to take these, put them back into the fridge, let everything kind of mold together. But at this point, it's time for us to get the Weber kettle up and running. So we're going to have to build ourselves a fire. Now for today's cook, we are going with the tried and true snake method. If this is your first time doing this, it's pretty simple. We're just going to take briquettes, do a layer of 2 around the edge, and then do another layer of 2 on top. That's called the 2x2. Now what we can also do is we can put some big chunks of wood kind of evenly spaced throughout the cook. This will add some nice smoky flavor. Now for this pork ribs, I really don't think I'm actually going to need this much, but it's been a while since I've done the snake. I'm imagining we're going to be stopped probably about here, but get it all laid out, and then what we're going to do is we're going to light 7 briquettes in our chimney and put them on one end. Okay, let's get this sucker lit. Now to light all my charcoal, I always have both top and bottom ends completely open. I'm just gonna light, like I said, about 7 briquettes. And yep, white lighter. With our chimney nice and hot, I'm gonna take our coals and pour them onto the end of our little snake. Just gonna use a little pusher to make sure they get nice and on top of the unlit coals. And then what I'm gonna do is just put a water pan in, fill it up with nice and hot water. This is where my drip pan's gonna be. So collect any of the gross stuff that comes off of our ribs and doesn't make my grill nice and disgusting. And then I'm just gonna toss our grill grates on. Now I wanna close this, keeping the vents open. Completely open, bottom and top, just to let this thing come up to temp. Now the fire is about right here. So I'm going to put the thermometer on this side. I'm going to put the food probably over here. What I want is the smoke to come across the top of the food and then come out through our vent. But we want this to come up to a nice warm temperature, and then we'll start adjusting the vents on either side. My grate thermometer is showing about 250 degrees at the grates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first get our food on. Now when you're looking to put the meat on, what I want to do is have the fatty, bony side that can take the most heat facing towards the fire. At this point, that'll be fire's right here. This is the fattier side, so I'm going to leave it like that. Now what I also want to do is adjust my bottom vent. I'm going to take it down to about a quarter open. And I'm going to leave the top completely open at this point. If this was the middle of the summer, I'd probably have that quarter and bottom quarter, and that'll probably keep me about 225 the whole way. But it is about 20 degrees outside. So I'm going to leave the bottom at quarter and the top completely open and then adjust as I notice the grill grates changing. What I want is about 225 to 275 at the grill grate right about here. So as it's coming, it's going to heat up, it's going to come up and over, and then come out through the vent like so. But at this point, we just want to leave it alone for a couple hours and let us develop that nice bark that we're looking for and just let the grill do its thing. A couple hours in, everything's coming along nicely, but this is looking a little bit dry, so I'm just going to give it a little spritz with some apple cider vinegar. Actually, I'm using hard apple cider, but apple cider vinegar is what most people use. And I'm going to close her up and let her keep going. We're showing an internal of about 140 degrees. Temperature has been sitting around 250, which is just where I want it. I'm just going to keep monitoring and spritzing when needed. And just over 6 hours into this cook, these are done, I think, guys. I'm probing them completely tender all over, to be completely honest. But if you follow this channel, you know what my thoughts are. What matters is the flap test. So if we lift these suckers up, oof. So guys, my usual thought process is to pick them up and do the flapper, and I'll be honest, they ripped in half. So these are ready to be pulled. They probably should have been pulled, maybe half an hour earlier. When I lift them up, they just split in half. So these are more tender than I usually do them, but oof, they look super good, super juicy. I'm gonna pull them off, put them in some tin foil, and we're going to wrap them up and just let them wait until we are ready to actually eat them. But they are perfectly done now. And I can let this kettle relax and just die out at this point. If you want to preserve any of your charcoal or wood that's in your machine right now, you can basically just shut off both the top and the bottom vents. What that's going to do is cut off the oxygen supply and allow everything to just die off. And then you can just pull out any, uncharred charcoal. I'm pretty much at the end of what we put in the beginning, so I don't think I'm going to have to do that. I'm just going to let it burn off. I might actually open everything up and let it burn even more. But yeah, these are looking really good. We have a really good color on these. I'm super excited to eat them. Tin foil, put them inside, get ready to eat them. Now these baby backs took about 6 hours and change, and I'll be honest, I took them actually a little bit further than I usually do. I'm a big fan of taking my ribs to the point where they're just about to pull apart and they still have some bite to them, but these are basically fall apart. As you can see, when I lifted them up off the grill, they kind of just completely fell apart. So these are pull apart ribs, and they're going to be fantastic. They're just taken to a little bit further than I usually do them. But let's see what we're working with, guys. This is a really simple cook, guys. We just did that snake method, let it run for about 6 hours. Not a lot of extra effort going on to it. I sprayed them down when they were looking a little bit dry, but here's what we're working with. Really good looking rib. The bark is really nice and set on here. Got a good smoke ring. I'm really excited to see what the taste is. So let's give it the old-fashioned chomp. Now the reason I did just salt, pepper, garlic is I really wanted to taste the charcoal and the smoke flavor. And you can absolutely taste it on these ribs. These are super good. You can taste just that smoke on the back end. The charcoal adds a really nice crisp to the exterior of the rib that you just don't get on a pellet smoker, which is what I've been cooking most of my ribs on recently. These are super good, guys. The Weber kettle is a really fun beast. A little bit extra effort tending that fire versus the pellet smoker, but the food definitely has a different taste to it.
Guys, if you are cooking up ribs on your Weber kettle, tell me what your thoughts are. Do you guys use the 2x2 snake method? Do you use something else? I have an S&S somewhere sitting in a box, ready to use that in the future, but I wanted to go back to the classics, which is how I used to do all my low and slow cooks in the past, which was just doing a snake method. Guys, this was a fun cook. Let me know your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear how you guys are cooking up your baby back ribs. Do you like baby back or do you like spare ribs? I am a spare ribs guy, but if you're a baby back fan, more power to you. And most importantly, cook something fantastic, and I will see you on the next barbecue. Bye-bye.